Good afternoon. I wanted to talk today a little bit about some of the assignments for this particular class. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about the textbook. And then finally, some of the types of writing you're going to be doing in your future professionally. If you have the textbook, the Technical Communication, a Practical Approach book, I just wanted to mention a few items from this. I've used this through about 4 different editions, and I obviously like this book, and so that's why I continue to use it. But most specifically, the chapters we will focus on extensively are Chapter 1, which is Process and Technical Communication, because that's a very, very important chapter. It compares technical writing compared to academic writing, like you would if you would be taking a class in research writing, such as advanced composition. So technical communication is a different type of writing. Now, technical writing does refer to writing that you do in your business writing, of course, in college. It also refers to writing that you do, which is workplace related. So, anyhow, I just wanted to mention that. Chapter 2, a little bit, we refer to that, but most specifically in that chapter, we are going to be looking at ethical considerations, which are sort of in the middle of the chapter. I'm not finding them right away now. Here they are, specifically pages 43 to 45, where they talk about be honest, do no harm, keep your commitments, be independent, and so on. And it's a really good, useful type of chapter to refer to. Chapter 3, though, under organizing information, very, very important. And this is the big difference from this class compared to other writing classes that you take. In this class, not only is the content important, but more so, the format is vitally important, because I'll refer you to a perfect example to illustrate that point. In Chapter 7, it talks about process explanations, instructions, and so on. If you look at page 219, making travel arrangements, and they put it in paragraph form, look at the difference on page 220 on making travel arrangements, and they use headings, they use list, bullets, bold, and so on. So it's much, much easier to read and follow. During the course of a year, I teach English 070, which is intermediate writing, but it's a course before college writing. But I also teach college writing, technical communication, which I teach the most of. I teach a police report writing class, human services writing, and advanced composition. I mainly teach that in the summertime. But the common theme in all of the classes is this. If writing is well formatted and easy to read, it makes it much more advantageous for the reader to go through it. This summer, I taught advanced composition, and I had students write a research paper. And I'm telling you, one of the best papers that I read, they were health and wellness related topics. And one student wrote about skin cancer, melanoma, and things like that. But she had visuals in her paper. She had headings. She had subheadings. She had a couple graphs and charts. And it just made it much, much more engaging to read. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you is if you practice using formatting, if you use some visuals in your writing, it really does help to make the person more aware and follow your writing much, much more consistently. So, but chapter 3 is important. Chapter 4 talks about page design, how you set up your document. Even if you're doing a resume, are you doing a 2-column spread, or you're spreading across the paper in 3 columns? If you're doing a brochure, if you're doing a pamphlet, if you're doing written instructions, if you're doing a short report, if you're doing an informal report, whatever it is that you're doing, how are you setting up the document? In my in-class courses, I've talked about this consistently. If you work for a company or a larger company, such as NASA, they have their own style guidelines. Caterpillar Heavy Equipment does. Many government agencies do. My sister Mary previously worked for the CIA. My brother Steve used to work for them. Now he works for the Department of Defense. But they have a certain format. I even had a FBI agent come to my criminal justice writing class, and he explained how the FBI wants their reports written. They use a narrative format, but they have to start out a certain way. They have to follow this exact format. And then when they do interviews, they have to label them a certain way, and they have to follow certain formats. But I was in the Navy, and we used the Naval Correspondence Manual. And one example that I give in class, which is vital as far as format-wise, if you use the word materiel in the Navy, M-A-T-E-R-I-E-L, that is different from material, M-A-T-A-R-I-E-L. Material is things that they use for aircraft and bombs and so on. Material is something that you, M-A-T-E-R-I-A-L is something you use that is expendable. So such as, if you were using, if you're buying pens and paper, that would be a difference. But it's surprising, when you work for an organization, like some places want you to use third world as a capital T and a capital W. Some want it another way. Some want reports set up a certain way. So what I'm trying to tell you to do is if you work for a larger company, obviously you'll follow their format or style guidelines. However, if you're working with a group of classmates or people from work, or if you even have a small company, how are you going to set up the document? So naturally, you can refer to chapters 3 and chapters 4 in this book, which are a good reference guide. But I mean, what are your headings going to look like? How long are your paragraphs going to be? What types of transition words are you going to use? How long will your sentences be? All those types of factors, and you have to use common terms and common language to make sure that everybody uses terms consistently. So for example, I wrote part of a textbook manual a couple years ago, and they required us to use the word term and not the word semester. And that was to make sure that it was done consistently. So that's what I would mention to you. But this whole chapter on page design is very useful. Chapter 5 on letters, memos, and email. With any of these documents that you do for this class or otherwise, there are many, many templates in Microsoft Word that you can refer to that are very helpful, because Word has templates on memos, letters, reports, websites. If you want to design a website, if you need to do a unique sort of pamphlet, if you need to do a resume, you have to do a cover letter. They have all those templates available through Word, and they're really, really quite good. Chapter 5, so like I said, letters, memos, and email, and they have plenty of good examples. Chapter 6, under definitions and descriptions, we don't refer to that one that much. It's okay, but that kind of is a review of what you went through in college writing. Chapter 7, though, very, very important. Process, explanations, and instructions. We refer to that very, very consistently. And especially the part of the chapter that has guidelines for process explanations, which starts on page 197. But the most critical element is guideline for instructions. And those can be written instructions or they can be oral instructions. But anyhow, those start on page 201 and they go to page 207. So I would refer you to that, which is obviously very useful. Chapter 8 covers informal reports, and remember, an informal report can be a short memo report, it can be a letter report, it can be an email report. Short reports, I've seen them 1 or 2 or 3 pages, so they can vary as far as that goes. But a lot of times at work, you're going to have to do incident reports or accident reports. Sometimes you have to do what's called a variance report. And so if there's a problem, like if you're working in a machine shop and you have too much scrap, or you're producing parts that are not meeting specs, why is there this variance? What problem is there? Chapter 9 talks about formal reports. You can take a look at that, but that's actually a pretty useful chapter. Chapter 10, under proposals and feasibility studies, you will do those throughout your career, definitely proposals. You're going to have to propose all different types of things. Chapter 11 on web pages to a certain degree, but 12 on graphics is very, very useful. That's a good chapter. Collaboration and writing 13, not as much in this particular class. Oral communication, I refer to that more in my in-class courses. But under technical research, under chapter 15, that chapter is okay. It probably could be a little bit better, but that just talks about conducting research that you do for this class and on the job. 16 is on the job search, and that one is actually helpful on resumes, cover letters, and so on. And then just the last one in style and technical writing. The biggest part of that chapter starts on pages 596 to about 600 as far as accuracy in writing. And there's also a glossary, and there's also at the very end, use the following standard abbreviations when making corrections. And so right at the very end of the book, there is a page on different types of sentence level errors or correction errors if you're editing someone's document. So I wanted to refer you to that. And what I also wanted to tell you too, in this class, we are going to be doing written instructions, and typically those come about the midpoint of the semester, and you are going to be explaining to someone else how to do a job or a task that you know how to do very well. So, for example, you could, like somebody in this class last year installed a car stereo, baking or cooking a certain dish. Lots of people do lasagna. Some people do Mexican food. Some people, like I said, do home repair. I've had people that wrote about ultimate frisbee, or how to play a particular position in sports, or even how to referee in sports. It's pretty unlimited, but most of them are typically between 3 to 5 pages long, and they typically have 4 to 5 visuals in them. And so you're going to produce your own written instructions. And I happen to be looking on my desk right now, and these are some written instructions that I had. And I have a Hewlett-Packard OfficeJet Pro, and these are the written instructions, but you can see more visuals and less writing, and so they're actually quite good. And so that's something like you will be doing in this class. You also are going to be doing a consumer report, and you have to compare 3 different brands of a product, and then you have to pick one. So they have to be similar. So, like you could compare like 3 mid-size SUVs. You could compare 3 motorcycles. I've had people that did trail cameras. I've had people that did, purses, shoes, carpeting, stoves, lots of different things. Last year, a couple people did bows and arrows, fly fishing rods. So it just has to be a consumer-oriented product, and it has to be over $100. So that's a good one that you'll do. And finally, what I wanted to mention to you is this. And I always tell the in-class students that I have this particular point. If you have to do your first resume for a job, that's fine. You can create that, or your own cover letter. You can work on that. Once you get to your second, third, or fourth job, and you really need a great resume, pay somebody to do your resume. Or there's also what's called a curriculum vitae, and that's a more developed resume. Pay somebody, $200 or so to do it, and you'll get a high quality resume that will be targeted and be very, very specific. So I pay somebody to do my taxes. So, I think it just makes sense. Obviously, you'll be able to do the majority of your writing for this class. You'll be able to develop writing skills from this class that you'll use at work. But, some of the types of writing you have to do, if it's beyond your scope, ask somebody else for help. And the last thing that I'm going to tell you is, in your first job, you're not going to write as extensively. In your second, third, fourth, fifth job, as you go along, you have to write more and more and more. You have to write, you have to speak, you have to present, you have to do proposals and all different types of things. So I'm just trying to tell you is the skills that you learn in college, you will be using them when you get out of school. So that's it. I'm almost out of time then. Thanks.